long-standing Giants tradition of losing in the All-Star game, even though they ultimately won that game on a swing-off. But the Giants come out of the break and lose 4 consecutive games in perhaps the most discouraging, disappointing, disheartening fashion you can lose ball games. When they hit well, their pitching and defense betrayed them. When they pitched well, their hitting was lifeless. Nothing this Giants team could do was seemingly good enough. And it all culminated on Monday night, which really may have been the single worst loss of the season. Non-competitive baseball, routine mental mistakes, and an ugly, ugly loss to an Atlanta Braves team that has no visions of making the postseason anymore this year. Those ideas went out the window when the Braves started essentially 0-7 and didn't get better from there. So the fashion in which the Giants lost last night was simply unacceptable. And when the Giants have gotten into these ruts, whether it be the May streak where they just couldn't hit, the June streak where they just couldn't beat bad teams, or this July streak where they've played perhaps their worst ball of the season, oftentimes they've dug their way out of it by turning to Landon Roop. Somehow, some way, the young right-hander has been the stopper for this team. Not Logan Webb, who's pitched extremely well at times, whose offense hasn't backed him up. Not Robbie Ray, an all-star, a veteran, someone who's given the Giants everything they could have hoped for and more. But it seems like when this team is down on its luck and playing its worst ball, the one guy who can help them turn things around is Landon Roop. And it's hard to put my finger on it. Maybe it's anecdotal evidence. Maybe there's no real science behind this. Maybe it's just the way I'm feeling because of recency bias. Because Roop threw tonight right after the Giants played one of their worst games of the season. But he turned in the game that they needed. It was just 5 innings, and he pitched through some traffic. There were some high pitch counts in the early innings, but Roop didn't allow a run. And the Giants offense gave him all the support that he would need, including that critical 4-run second inning when they beat a pitcher who they had no business losing to. They finally opened the game up, a game that was waiting to be opened up for seemingly the last several weeks for this ball club. The Giants took care of business. They won 9-0, and this was exactly the medicine that a team that's been fighting through its worst cold spell of the season needed. So we're going to head out to the phone lines. 415-808-KNBR is the number. I know there are many of you eager to get on the line. Let's start things off with our friend Brooklyn Bob. Brooklyn Bob in Cedar Creek, you're on Sports Phone. Brooklyn Bob, how are you this evening?
Very good. Thank you, Kerry. I asked for a minute, but it might go to 4. That's your producer's call. Anyway.
I love it. Let's hear what you got to say.
I talked to Bill last night, and I thought, we were good through 4, and then we imploded. But there were some good things. Bailey rocketed a line drive, was stolen by their shortstop at the top of the glove. That's a good sign. And then Devers, after a guy walked, got hit by a pitch, why does he swing at the first pitch and give a charity hop to the second baseman? But let's get to tonight. This is, I believe, our Waterloo, our Battle of Saratoga. This is the turning point. This was a beautiful game on every single metric. Pitching. And they just did everything right. Schmidt, I believe, and I believe this since he came up, is the real deal. I think they should put, and I love that they put Devers to play first base. He has to get more out of his head batting and play the whole game. Okay. And I think in the long run, they should platoon Schmidt and Devers at first, send Wilmer to DH. I'm sorry, but Ramos has to go back to Sacramento to learn how to play left field.
Look, Ramos is awful defensively. He is making miscue after miscue, mental mistake after mental mistake. but he's got like the second highest OPS on the team. You're not sending Elliot Ramos back to Sacramento. If you're doing anything with Elliot Ramos, maybe you consider a trade for him this offseason so you can get some different players in here and change your mix because he's more of a DH type. But he's not going back to AAA.
I got that. But last night, there was a ball, one more step in left field. It was a hard ball. I know a rising line drive.
Yeah.
One more step, he gets it. And the whole thing with him and Jung Ho, that was Ramos's problem from the start because he called it, he backed off, and it made Jung Ho look silly, but it was not Jung Ho's problem.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I truly believe, and I said this to Bill last night, this is a good team. We should not throw the baby out with the bathwater. We've got 60 games left, and I think tonight is the turning point.
Okay, there you go. Brooklyn Bob, thank you for the call. I appreciate your thoughts this evening. 415-808-KNBR is the number. I am not ready to sit here and say that a win over the lowly Atlanta Braves is the turning point of the season for the San Francisco Giants, particularly after the week of baseball that we just watched, after the mental errors that this Giants team just made. I think there may be some recency bias, and I'm sure that some of my recency bias will come up for the course of this show. But I do think that everything that absolutely 100% needed to happen tonight did happen. They got the start from Landon Roop. They scored early. They scored often. They were able to set up the bullpen and let Bob Melvin do whatever the heck he wanted to for the final 4 innings of that ball game because it didn't matter. The game was in hand. When was the last time the Giants truly played a game where they didn't have to worry about the outcome and they were winning in big-time fashion? Maybe 7-2 over the A's on July 5th. Maybe 7-2 over the Diamondbacks on July 3rd, but those are just 5-run wins. A 9-run margin of victory is huge. And the Giants didn't have to worry about the outcome this evening. Let's go to John in South City. John in South City, you're on Sports Phone. John, how are you this evening?
Hey, I'm doing well, Kerry. First of all, I really enjoy listening to your show all the time, man. First of all, I have a lot of respect for you, my man.
Well, thank you so much. Hey, we appreciate all our callers. Thanks for dialing in. What's on your mind?
Hey, I want to talk about today's win. I don't want to talk about last night, okay? I do not want to talk about last night, okay? All right, last night was an embarrassing loss, okay? Tonight, I give a lot of credit to Landon Roop for pitching well to end that losing streak. How big it was, Kerry? Kerry, that was really huge, man. That was really huge tonight, man. For the Giants, putting up 9 runs against Atlanta, that's huge. If I'm
and
the
it's
Giants,
what Landon Roop does. This is what Landon Roop does. He wins when this team needs him to step up. He wins on days after the Giants lose. He's a stopper for this ball club.
I like this guy, and I really liked him last year. You know, I'm not going to name the other pitcher we had last year who was being, I don't want to say the word drama. I hate saying that word. I don't like saying drama. Our pitching staff looks good. The question is, Kerry, if this team can make a playoff run, do you think they need another starting pitcher at this point?
Yeah. John, that is the million-dollar question right now because this team needs about 5 different things. If the Giants are going to make a run, they've got to patch up about 4 or 5 different holes with this team. But I look at them, and I see one glaring need to get through 162 and win enough to get into the postseason, and that is starting pitcher. I think you could look at the bullpen and make the case they need 2 arms down there. I think you could make the case they need another catcher next to Patrick Bailey who can help take some of the weight off of his shoulders. I think you make the case they could use another big bat in this lineup. I think you make the case they need a 4th outfielder, especially a right-handed guy who can handle all 3 defensive positions and be a plus fielder. But more so than anything, John, I think they need a starting pitcher because Hayden Birdsong lost his job in the rotation today, and there is simply no one who can fill it right now.
Well, I knew that was going to happen. He totally lost his command, Kerry. As a pitcher, you've got to find your commands. And I was listening to Rich Aurelio last night on the post-game show saying he just lost his command. And I 100% agree with Richie. I love Aurelia. I mean, forever giant. I mean, I grew up watching him.
One of the best.
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, you're right.
absolutely. And he calls it like
And
he
then
sees
okay,
it too. That's one of the reasons I really respect Rich and what he does, because a lot of players love to come on and talk about the team that they played for. Rich is willing to be critical. He's willing to call out guys when they're not giving 100% effort. I think Rich is just great as an analyst.
absolutely. And I also want to bring up one more thing about our farm system. I know
Yeah.
I know I talk to Bill about Bryce Eldridge all the time. I know it was really early last year to bring him up to AAA, and then he gets hurt during in Double A. Is that correct? He got injured. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was hurt at AAA this year. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I think I felt like he got a little rush at it last year. I mean, do you see him as a September call, or is this just too early to call at this moment?
I think more of a mid 2026 call up for Bryce Eldridge. I do. I think it's just a really hard thing for a guy who's 20 years old to come up and impact a playoff race. I think he's got a lot of room to grow defensively. I think the Giants and Bryce will be better off if he's 2026. So, John, thank you for the call. I appreciate your thoughts. We got a lot more people on the line, a lot of people that I want to get to this evening. 415-808-KNBR is the number. Let's go to Jeff in Sebastopol. Jeff in Sebastopol, you're on Sports Phone. Jeff, how are you this evening?
Hey, Terry, how you doing? Great show.
Doing well on my end. What's on your mind
I
tonight?
just want to mention, like, this is kind of a continuation of what Bill talked about yesterday, but, like, I mean, I understand fans they're passionate and all that, but, like, I think they need a reality check in terms of, like, how people are motivated, how people learn. You can't just, like, go to a team or, a player and yell at them and light a fire under their butt, so to speak. It doesn't work like that. I was a teacher for a long time, as a coach in prep. It's consistent involvement in teaching, and it's over a long period of time. And some of it involves the player or the student buying in. You can't make someone be better if they don't want to be better.
Yeah. No, I think you're 100% right on that. And I think that you, with your career experience, are speaking a lot of truth here. Like, whenever I was an athlete, which was a long time ago now, I always felt like people who were heavily involved in my development wanted the best outcome for me, and I knew that they were invested in that. Those were the people that you'd listen to. And I think that it's no different for major leaguers. It's no different for professional athletes. They know who's invested in their own success, who's invested in the team's success, and who's really just invested in personal success. It's pretty easy to snuff out. And so when you're invested in personal success, maybe, shouting at guys and making a big scene is going to create some sort of energy or moment that you want to create at that specific time, Jeff. But you're right. It's a long road to making a difference, making an impact, changing a guy's swing, changing a guy's approach to the plate. And you need consistent involvement from these coaches and consistent belief from the players on the other end, too, that the folks who are instructing them know what they're doing as well.
Right. I mean, baseball is such a hard sport. It was my worst sport. My best sport was football. And if you're willing to run into guys, awesome. You can, get hyped up or whatever you want to do, run fast, and if you're willing to commit violence. But baseball is like fractions of an inch. I popped up. I hit, past the third baseline, the first baseline. I was a little bit foul. I mean, this is like really a hard game, and I guess I'm just tired of people calling in and saying, like, they got to do this, and Melvin's got to talk to him. And it's like, no, he's been talking to him since March.
Exactly. It's not just, hey, Bob's got to do this tonight, and everything changes. We are not privy to all the conversations that happen behind the scenes. We don't know exactly what's being said by who in any given moment. One thing that I will say, in my years of covering this team and my years of following this specific person, when Buster speaks, people in that Giants clubhouse tend to listen. He's very selective with the times that he speaks, and I think even more selective now that he's the president of baseball operations. So it'll be fascinating to see if and when he addresses this team around the trade deadline, what he does, if he'll speak through his actions at the trade deadline, and if he'll then come and speak to guys in the clubhouse, and if that's something on the outside that we'll even hear about. Because we know he kind of sent a message back in June when he said it's time to go, following the Montway Jr. designation for assignment. We know what message he sent after the Rafael Devers trade. Now what message will he send in the coming week leading up to the trade deadline. That, Jeff, is something that I want to see. So thank you for the call. Appreciate your thoughts tonight. 415-808-KNBR is the number. We do have to get to a quick break here. 415-808-KNBR. We're going to continue talking Giants baseball. Their 9-0 win over the Atlanta Braves this evening at Truist Park on our next segment. You're listening to KNBR 104.5-680, the Sports Leader.
Giants fans, this is your hub to have your voice heard. Sports Phone KNBR. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
2-0 pitch. Chapman swings and lines one out into deep left center field. Harris on the run. He's at the track, at the wall, and it's off the top of the fence. Karam's away. Adames is on the move, rounding third, heading home. He's going to score, and Chapman all the way to third will make it in there without a throw. It's an RBI triple. Giants lead 1-0.
We are back here on Sports Phone KNBR. Kerry Crowley rolling with you until about 9 o'clock this evening. Hanging out with you after the Giants dismantle the Braves 9-0. They needed a laugher tonight, and they got one, courtesy some big early hits, including the one you just heard Joe Rizzo call there. Matt Chapman launching a ball. I thought it went over the wall. Replay reviews apparently showed that it went high off the wall, and Chapman was awarded a triple. Didn't seem to matter as he comes home on the Wilmer Flores RBI later on the sacrifice fly. Exactly what the Giants needed. A hot start, a great start from Landon Roop as well. Bullpen finishes it off. They win 9-0. We get to head out to the phone lines. Happy callers all night long. 415-808-KNBR is the number. Let's head out to our friend Bob in Saratoga. Bob in Saratoga, you're on Sports Phone. Bob, how are you this evening?
Doing well, thanks. I was very depressed watching the All-Star game because there were so many young, great players that are All-Stars, none of which had been drafted by the Giants in Fargon's period of time here. I think we were 4 years behind, or whatever years he was here, on the lacking of his ability to draft good players. And it came out, and a lot of them are from the Bay Area. We had Stephen Kwan from Fremont. Kyle Stowers went to Stanford. Byron, what's his name? Lou was from Alameda.
Brian Wu, Alameda.
Yeah, and then Chris Busick was Mitty in Stanford, and then Struble was from Hayward. I mean, we just missed it. We're paying now for all of the sins and all of the poor performance by the leader we had for too long. And you know how many times I called in, and you got the call many times about Fargod's got to go. And I think we have to give Buster Posey more than 1 year to try to rebuild that whole farm system that won us 2 World Series. And I really hesitate to be criticizing him at all for what he's doing. He's already done some good things, but he can't do this in 1 year. So I'm just hoping the fans will stop criticizing Buster. He's doing the best he can with limited source of funds.
Okay, thank you for the call, Bob. I appreciate your thoughts as always. And
okay.
Look, the Giants as an organization haven't drafted well since 2008, which is when they took Buster Posey.
Yeah.
They also got Brandon Crawford. They also have Brandon Bell, 2009. Okay, that was a pretty good draft. Outside of that, the Giants haven't drafted that well for 15-plus years. So the issues go far beyond Farhan Zaidi's tenure. They include Bobby Emmons. They include Brian Sabean, whether Giants fans want to hear it or not. And you can point to examples of folks from the Bay Area who've been successful in Major League Baseball and say, how could you miss these guys? In the case of Brian Wu, an incredible story. Alameda High, great pitcher for the Seattle Mariners. Look at his stats at Cal Poly. Guy's ERA was like 6.35. I don't know too many scouts. I really don't know too many scouts who are going to go and say, hey, that guy that you got coming out of the bullpen there, who can't throw a strike, who's been injured for half his college career and his ERA is in the 6s, that's the guy I want. Credit to the Seattle Mariners scout who found him. But that's one I don't really blame the San Francisco Giants on. Tarek Skubal, labeled forever as Hayward's own Tarek Skubal. Guy grew up in Kingman, Arizona. He didn't grow up in the Bay Area. He was born in Hayward. I don't think the Giants missed out by not stationing a scout in Kingman, Arizona, and then at Seattle U, where he pitched in college. Stephen Kwan, light-hitting outfielder, not regarded highly coming out of college, or coming out of high school. Played up in Oregon State. You should say that the Giants should have someone stationed on the West Coast, should understand at the time the Pac-12 conference. I get that. But at the same time, the knock on the Giants has been that they have too many light-hitting players. Stephen Kwan wasn't viewed as someone coming through the farm system of the Cleveland Guardians as a guy who's going to hit for elite power. You can play the Bay Area game all you want, and I fully believe, I agree with Bob, the Giants should scout the Bay Area more regularly. They should find the homegrown talent, and they should get them. But sometimes you end up with Tony Torquato, okay? Sometimes it doesn't work out. And yes, the Tony Torquato draft, which I believe was 97, CC Sabathia was overlooked. Giants wouldn't meet his demands, and he goes into the Hall of Fame this weekend. Vallejo zone. So you can find Northern California guys all you want. You just have to find the right guys. And when you bring up these examples, you have to bring up the ones who actually came to professional baseball out of the Bay Area. There are plenty of players. Chris Bubich, of course, of Midi High. Stanford, he's someone who you absolutely think. But then, you go to the 2019 draft. Giants drafted their Bay Area guy. It was Hunter Bishop coming out of Sarah. Can't miss product coming out of Arizona State. But ultimately, he hasn't made it to the major leagues yet. That was the 2019 draft. So you can play this game all you want, but there's a lot more to scouting than just looking at home. 415-808-KNBR is the number. We'll take a quick break here. We'll be right back. Talking more Giants baseball. KNBR 104.5-680, the sports leader.
is the flagship of Giants baseball. Double play! KNBR and KNBR FM San Francisco, the sports leader. We are all faithful. Let's go! On KNBR and KNBR FM. San Francisco! Giants fans, this is your hub to have your voice heard. Sports Phone KNBR. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
Works out of the windup. And his 2-2. Schmidt swings and belts it high and deep out to left field. This one is on its way. It is gone. A no-doubter to left off the bat of Casey Schmidt. And there's no question on that one. A solo shot for Schmidt, and it's 3-0 Giants.
We are back here on Sports Phone KNBR. Kerry Crowley rolling with you until about 9 o'clock this evening. I want to thank everyone who's called in so far. 415-808-KNBR is the number. The phone lines are wide open right now. Good time to call. I will say, the Giants are not a team that hits for a ton of power. But there are certain players that when they get into a pitch and they launch it, it's a thing of beauty. And Casey Schmidt is one of them. When he pulls a baseball and hits a no-doubter, it's usually going about 420 to 430 feet. And that shot tonight, part of the Giants' big 4-run second inning, that was a blast. The Giants needed every bit of the hot start that they got from their lineup. They needed every bit of the 5 scoreless innings that Landon Roop was able to produce that lowered his ERA to 3.11 on the season. And they needed every bit of a true laugher. They have not had a win like this in a long time. Heck, they haven't had a win in a long time. It was before the All-Star break that this team secured its last victory. So the Giants will absolutely take this one. They'll head into tomorrow, Justin Verlander on the hill, hoping they can get him his first victory of the season. And what a moment that would be. It's baseball for breakfast. You just heard the promo. Murph and Marcus, their show is short tomorrow. Their show abbreviated so they can bring you Giants baseball on the radio. Giants desperately need a series win over the lowly Atlanta Braves. And they did get some good news this evening with scores around Major League Baseball. The San Diego Padres lost a tough one in Miami against the Marlins, which means the Giants move back to 2.5 games out of this National League wildcard race, a wildcard race that they desperately think that they can be a part of. And we will see over the next 10 days or so. Buster Posey's got some big decisions to make. It's whether to add to this roster, how much to add to this roster, stand pat, or even the dreaded sell. I don't think that Posey will trend towards sell, but again, winning tomorrow would help the Giants' case. Then they've got a big kind of homestand against these teams in the National League East. They've got series against the Mets and the Pirates, and they go on the road, the Mets and the Pirates. So there are opportunities here for the Giants to pick up wins. They've just got to take advantage of a softer portion of their schedule. And that's having been playing great baseball. They got off to that great start in April and May. But like the Giants, they've fallen back a bit. So let's take a look around Major League Baseball. Some of the scores this evening as we give you a peek at some of the teams the Giants are contending against right now. Rockies up 7-4, bottom of the 8th inning at Coors Field right now. They're trying to add on Mickey Moniak at the plate, bases loaded, 2 outs. They're playing the St. Louis Cardinals, a 52-49 ball club. The Giants would love to create some distance from in the National League wildcard standings, so they are hoping that the Rockies take care of business. The Diamondbacks, 50-51 on the season, up 1-0 of the Houston Astros right now in the bottom of 5th inning at home at Chase Field. Framber Valdez on the hill for the Astros. The D-backs could be one of those teams, excuse me, that sells a ton of players at this year's deadline. Eugenio Suarez, who has 36 home runs, he could be on his way out. Merrill Kelly, Zach Gallen, they could go. Josh Naylor, pending free agent first baseman, he could be on his way out. So the D-backs, a big team to watch over the next week or so as things really start to heat up. Top of the 6th inning up in Seattle, where the red-hot Milwaukee Brewers taking on the Seattle Mariners. Brewers have just 1 hit right now, but it doesn't matter because Logan Gilbert not getting any run support from that Seattle offense. It's 0-0 right now. Jacob Mizorowski, the All-Star, started tonight for Milwaukee. How about this? He goes 3 2/3 innings. The All-Star goes 3 2/3 innings. 3 hits, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts, 64 pitches. That's all you're going to see from him. Brewers went to the bullpen, and so we will see how that game plays out. Twins and Dodgers playing one another down in Los Angeles right now. Dodgers 3-7 in their last 10 ball games. They really have been struggling. They were closing in on 60 wins, and they haven't been able to get there. Yoshinobu Yamamoto getting hit around early by Minnesota. Twins up 3-0 in that ball game. Minnesota, one of those teams, very much a squad that could be a fascinating seller if they decide to go all out and sell at this year's deadline. They're 48-52 right now. I think Harrison Bader, right-handed hitting outfielder, the perfect fit for what the Giants need. He could play left field, he could play center field, he could play right field, he could play every day in the Giants outfield. He hits lefties extremely well, OPS in the high 700s. He's one of the best defensive players in the outfield in all of baseball. Buster Posey ought to make the call. But the real star of that Twins team that Buster Posey ought to call on, and it would take a package centered around Carson Wisnut and then throwing in about 3 or 4 other prospects. Joe Ryan. Marin's own Joe Ryan. Grew up a Giants fan. Says his mom still roots for the Giants. Joe Ryan reportedly could be traded at this year's deadline. I read something earlier today that said the Twins would have to be blown away by the offers that they would receive. I don't know that the Giants can quite put together a package that would blow them away, but man, Joe Ryan, sub-3 ERA, and Minnesota in sell mode this year. Some other scores around Major League Baseball. Cleveland Guardians up. Excuse me. Cleveland Guardians winning 6-3 right now. We don't have a cough button here in this new studio setup, so I apologize for the peek behind the scenes at KNBR here. Guardians won 6-3 over the Orioles today. As Cantillo got the win, Young took the loss. Emmanuel Clase, who could be traded this year's deadline, he got saved number 22. Believe it or not, the Guardians at 50-50, 100 games down, 62 to go. They're in second place in the AL Central. They're 9 games behind, 9 wins behind the Detroit Tigers right now, who are sitting at 59 wins, but the Tigers are playing terrible ball. They're winners of 2 of their last 10. Guardians may not sell like we all expect them to if they can keep up their hot pace. They're 8-2 in their last 10. So really trying to close the gap in that AL Central. Speaking of the Tigers, they lost 8-5 to the Pittsburgh Pirates tonight. Pirates beat the Tigers for the second straight game. Mitch Keller got win number 4. Casey Mize takes loss number 4. He's now 9-4 for Detroit. David Bednar saved number 15. Giants don't want to catch the Pirates at the wrong time when they come in at Oracle Park later this week. Marlins, 4-3 winners of the San Diego Padres. We already mentioned that one. Edward Cabrera got the victory for Miami. Enriquez gets the save. His 6th of the season. Cabrera 4-4 with a 3.48 earned run average. Phillies won 4-1 over the Boston Red Sox today. Christopher Sanchez, just incredible season that he's having for Philadelphia. Why I think that team will be very dangerous in the postseason. Might even be my leading contender in the National League this year because of their rotation. The Phillies can hit you with Zach Wheeler, with Christopher Sanchez, with Ranger Suarez. I mean, that is a great trio at the top. Aaron Nola has become the forgettable piece of that group. The Phillies can pitch so well. They just need a bullpen, and they need a lot of bullpen arms. Dave Dombrowski's trying. He's going to be active at this year's deadline. They may need a bat, but bullpen help, priority number 1 for Philadelphia. We saw them a few weeks ago at Oracle Park, and Jordan Romano giving up the 3-run walk-off inside the park home run to Patrick Bailey. Not a memory that's going to make the Phillies World Series highlight video. Nationals won 6-1 today over the Cincinnati Reds, helped out the Giants in that regard. Reds 52-50, still very much alive in this NL playoff race. They have designs on making a wild card push, and I know at 52-50 it may not seem likely, but hey, the Giants are just 2 games ahead of them right now, 54-49. So if you're San Francisco, you're peeking over your shoulder, looking at Cincinnati, looking at the St. Louis Cardinals, starting to watch these scores. It's not just the Padres and the teams in front of you you're paying attention to. You're also trying to avoid falling behind some of these teams before next week's trade deadline, which of course comes on Thursday. Tampa Bay Rays won 4-3 today over the Chicago White Sox. Edwin Uceta gets the win. Dean Martin takes the loss. Peter Fairbanks save number 17. Rays at 53-49 right now. Yankees won at 5-4 today over the Toronto Blue Jays. The red-hot Blue Jays fall to the Yanks. They're still 3 games ahead of New York in the AL East standings. Jeff Hoffman took the loss late in that one. Devin Williams saved number 15. Mets won 3-2 over the Angels. Frankie Montas got the win in that one, so the Mets improved to 58-44. They're so good at Citi Field, yet so bad on the road. It's amazing. No team in baseball has splits quite like the New York Mets this year. Cubs took it 6-0 over the Kansas City Royals. Rich Hill made his return to Major League Baseball today. 45 years old, Rich Hill, pitching in that ball game. He pitched well, but not well enough to get the win in that one. Instead, it was Former Giant, he was on the roster at least for a while, at least on the 60-day injured list. Matthew Boyd, an all-star this year, 11-3, 2.20 earned run average for Matthew Boyd. And our final score to tell you about this evening, the Rangers won at 6-2 over the Sacramento Athletics. Jacob deGrom gets win number 10 of the season for Bruce Bochy's squad, which quietly working its way back into that AL wildcard race at 52-50. Sean Newcomb takes the loss for the Sacramento A's, who are 19 games below 500. So we said that's the final out-of-town score. Once more for you, the Giants take it 9-0 tonight over the Atlanta Braves. If you didn't pay attention early, well, you missed Rafael Devers' first experience in the field. He talked about that postgame with reporters tonight, said he wants to play first base. He wants to be in the field. Helps him get his mind off of just hitting and being in the cage in between innings. Devers goes 2 for 5 with an RBI in tonight's ball game. Average up to 259, OPS back up to 841. They're far cry from what he came over from Boston with, but the Giants will take some better hacks from Rafael Devers. He did have a nice double in tonight's ball game, his 25th of the season. Still sitting at 17 homers. Giants really haven't seen that power come into full effect. But you start to think, if Devers does feel more comfortable playing the field, maybe, just maybe, the Giants will be able to maximize his potential and get some of that power tapped into during the second half of the season. They've got Willie Adames going right. Matt Chapman had a big night this evening, 2 for 5. Wilmer Flores, of course, hit the home run, finished with 4 RBIs. So everything was clicking for the Giants offense. Need a heck of a lot more games like this one. 104 games in the books, 60 to go for this, 58 to go for this Giants ball club. So there you have it, 53-49. On the other side, talking 49ers football, Santa Clara training camp. It all starts tomorrow. You're listening. KNBR 104.5, 680, the sports leader.
This is Sports Phone KNBR. Dial the digits or send us a text at 415-808-KNBR. We're streaming on YouTube all damn day at KNBR 1045.
We are back here on Sports Phone KNBR. Kerry Crowley hanging out with you this evening. We've talked plenty of San Francisco Giants, and to be quite honest with you, I think we've talked plenty of San Francisco Giants over the course of the last week here on KNBR. So one thing that was on my mind, one thing that I wanted to do this evening, I'll be with you on Wednesday night, I'll be with you on Thursday night, filling in for Larry Krueger on Niners Nightly, is talk a little 49ers football. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch were down in Santa Clara today hosting their season opening press conference, and really the press conference that begins training camp for the San Francisco 49ers. Rookies reported last week the 49ers received a bit of good news late last week, when Alfred Collins, their second-round draft pick, out of University of Texas, the big 330-plus pound defensive tackle, signed his rookie contract. 88% of that rookie deal guaranteed. There was a holdup because the first two picks of the second round received fully guaranteed deals, and all 30 other players were kind of holding the line, waiting to see if they could also get guaranteed deals. But Collins inevitably gets 88% from the San Francisco 49ers last week. He reports to camp. He's not on the PUP list. He, of course, was dealing with a calf injury that he dealt with before Pro Day, so that forced him to miss rookie training camp, mini camp this summer. So this is the first that the 49ers will get the chance to see Alfred Collins on the field, and he'll play an incredibly important role for this 49ers team this season. But today wasn't about the rookies. Today was about Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, kind of setting the tone for the 2025 season. And it's one where the 49ers are already beginning training camp, I think, in an interesting situation, in large part because of a wide receiver corps that remains, well, let's just say undefined is the best way to put it, because this is a team that earlier today went out and signed Equanimeous St. Brown, who's got limited NFL experience, has played over the course of the last 6 seasons, did not make a catch last year for the New Orleans Saints in 2 games that he appeared with them. A veteran player who, let's put it this way, if he is on the field for you taking significant reps, your offense has sustained a significant number of injuries. He is, someone who was good in college but hasn't really translated those skills to the NFL. He's someone who can provide depth for this team, but ultimately the 49ers are in a position where they are really, really hurting for depth at the receiver position, and it's why Juwan Jennings' declaration 8 days ago to Adam Schefter, or at least Juwan Jennings' agent's declaration to Adam Schefter, became such a talking point over the course of last week here on KNBR, in and around Santa Clara, around the 49ers, because this is a team that traded Deebo Samuel away to the Washington Commanders. This is a team that is dealing with the ramifications of Brandon Ayuk's massive knee injury that required reconstruction of his ACL and MCL last season. And this is a team that also knows that Ricky Pearsall struggled to stay healthy last season. Of course, he dealt with the insane situation, the gunshot wound that happened during training camp that ultimately held him out for the first half of the season or so. He came back and performed admirably for the 49ers and really exceeded my expectations and what they could realistically think Pearsall could offer last year. But he dealt with some soft tissue injuries, including a hamstring issue that cropped up again during minicamp. The 49ers held him out of minicamp for the entirety of it of June. Kyle Shanahan at the time said if this was the regular season, he might be practicing, but that wasn't the case. And, you go into the start of training camp and Ricky Pearsall is on the physically unable to perform list, which came out last week. And that immediately raised some eyebrows as to how prepared he will be for the regular season, how prepared his body is for the rigors of a 17-game season. Of course, what the 49ers will do at this wide receiver position that is so pivotal after they've given Brock Purdy the 5-year, $265 million extension, after they gave George Kittle the 4-year, $80+ million extension that once again anoints him as the highest paid tight end in the NFL, as they get Christian McCaffrey back on the field and healthy and ready to go at the start of training camp. Who is Brock Purdy going to throw the ball to other than Purdy or McCaffrey? And entering the start of last week, it appeared as though the 49ers would be in a position to rely heavily on Jennings at the beginning of the season, but he comes out, or his agent comes out through the statement to Adam Schefter, that he's either requested a trade or wants to be paid more. And John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan said pretty unequivocally today down in Santa Clara at their press conference that Jennings has not requested a trade. The relationship with him is still good. They obviously love him. And Kyle even said, it's a situation where you have to at least consider sweetening the pot a little bit. And he didn't use that phrase specifically, but he did kind of indicate that the 49ers would be open to a contractual adjustment for Jennings, who just last offseason signed the 2-year, $15 million deal that immediately looked to be under market value, considering the production that Jennings was able to give the 49ers last season, especially considering the fact that Debo was not the same version of Debo that you've come to expect. That Ayuk, who held out for much of training camp, or held in for much of training camp is the correct terminology, just wasn't himself during the first 6-7 weeks of the season before he ultimately went on IR following the knee injury. And Pearsall with some up and down play. So Jennings was very clearly the most dependable performer. The 49ers didn't have McCaffrey, who they could throw the ball to out of the backfield with any sort of regularity. And so because of that, Jennings kind of emerged as the guy, and his production suggests that he's capable of far more. And so he wants to be paid this offseason. And when you look at the rest of the 49ers wide receiver core, it's easy to see how Jennings can make the case for himself, because one of the big free agents the 49ers signed this offseason was Demarcus Robinson, who comes over from the Los Angeles Rams. Robinson, of course, just had the DUI case finish up where he pleaded no contest, so that means that in all likelihood he will be suspended by the NFL in the coming days and weeks for at least the first 2 games, potentially the first 3 games of the regular season, with Pearsall starting on the PUP list. Who knows if he will be in tip-top shape by week 1 of this regular season. We know Ayuk will not be ready to go probably for the first 4 games, maybe longer than that headed into this season. And then you've got a second-year receiver in Jacob Cowing, who, by all accounts, was one of the most improved players on the practice field this offseason. Has put on a significant amount of weight after showing up to training camp last year at 168 pounds, coming out of the University of Arizona. And then you've got 4th-round draft pick Jordan Watkins, who is coming out of Ole Miss, but is completely unproven and playing a position where Kyle Shanahan has acknowledged it's very difficult to get receivers on the field in their first NFL season. Brandon Ayuk, who was a first-round draft pick, even battled that. You remember the days when Ayuk was kind of in Shanahan's doghouse because he wasn't prepared to be a blocker on the outside. And as is the case for many NFL coaches, no block, no rock, but that is particularly true in Kyle Shanahan's system. So I think that's a situation to watch, and it sounded to me optimistic today. The 49ers are hoping that Juwan Jennings will at least suit up and practice. He may not go through full-speed team drills unless he gets that contractual adjustment that he's looking for. And I do think the 49ers have some incentive to pay Juwan Jennings. But the other situation, David Lombardi of the San Francisco Standard really brought this to light with his reporting this afternoon, that Kyle Shanahan spoke about pretty plainly, was Colton McKivitz is also someone who's entering the final season of a contract with the 49ers. He'd signed a 2-year deal with San Francisco, and he's owed up to about $4 million this year, with about 2.1 of that guaranteed. And Shanahan, told reporters today that he views each of those players to be in very similar situations right now as they're entering the final year of their contract. And he said, look, the way they feel about us is the same way we feel about them. That's the easy part. The hard part is the business side. That's 2 guys where it does make sense. We'll do everything we can to work that out, but it's not always easy. And that, to me, indicated that you might be entering a situation at the beginning of training camp here where not only would Jennings want to get that contractual adjustment, it's entirely possible that Colton McKivitz wants to get that as well for the San Francisco 49ers. And look, he was someone who had, according to Lombardi of the Standard, the 24th highest pay at the right tackle position last year. And I am not the biggest fan of Colton McKivitz. I don't think he's a top 5, top 8, maybe even top 10 right tackle in the NFL right now. But you could argue that he's a top 12, top 14 tackle, and at a position that's extremely thin. 49ers offensive line group behind Trent Williams at left tackle, there's essentially no one. Behind Colton McKivitz at right tackle, there's essentially no one. He also has some leverage to ask for more in a contract. The 49ers completely willing, if McKivitz says, hey, I don't think I'm being paid fairly, to go with an Andre Dillard or to go with an Austin Pleasance. I don't think you're going to get to a situation where Colton McKivitz is holding in and becoming a distraction for the San Francisco 49ers, because I think he realizes after watching Laken Tomlinson and Mike McGlinchey and Aaron Banks and Jalen Moore, that one more decent season from him will get him paid in the NFL and will get him to that big second, really third contract that will ultimately make him, a life's worth of money. And I think he knows that he's 17 games away from that. It's probably not the 49ers going to give him that deal. And if he settles right now, let's say the 49ers sweeten the pot to maybe pay him $6 million this season and guarantee $3 or $4 million of that, I don't think that's a situation where McKivitz ultimately says, okay, let's do this deal. In fact, I want to sign on a 2-3 year extension at $6 million per year, so he's making 3 for 18. When you've got a guy like Zach Tom, who of course is really, really good. He's one of the best offensive players or offensive linemen in the NFL, making $22 million per. I really look at McKivitz's situation is similar to Jalen Moore, who, of course, was the 49ers swing tackle, filled in for Trent Williams pretty admirably last year, and ultimately signs the 2-year, $30+ million deal with the Kansas City Chiefs. Or you look at Aaron Banks, who signs 4 years, more than $60 million with the Green Bay Packers. If you're Colton McKivitz, you have to follow their career paths and see potential for you to make that kind of money if you simply stay healthy and replicate the season you had last year. Again, no one's expecting you to be the best right tackle in the NFL. No one's expecting you to be a top 5 right tackle. But if you are a top 12 to top 14 player at that position, once again, then you will cash in next year. Then you will make your money, and then you will be pretty much set up for life. So I do think that his situation is very different from Jennings, because I think there's a world in which Jennings is healthy this season and still finishes maybe 5th on the 49ers in receptions. I think George Kittle will once again be the leading receiver for this team. I think with a healthy Christian McCaffrey, 49ers are going to look to get him the ball 60 to 70 times out of the backfield, out in space. Maybe they use Isaac Guerrero more as a true tailback, and maybe they split McCaffrey out wide more. But then, you're going to have Brandon Ayuk coming back at some point. And if Ricky Pearsall does take the second-year leap that he looked capable of making by the end of his rookie season, as long as he's healthy, then Jennings is going to become someone who is 5th in the team in catches, who's no longer set up to cash in next year, and maybe doesn't attract the type of interest on the open market that you would think that he would, following a 77-catch, 975-yard season that he had with San Francisco a year ago. And my rationale for all of this is, you look at the wide receivers who are still available right now. There are a ton of players, from Amari Cooper to Gabe Davis to DJ Shark, who all have accomplished a lot at the NFL level, who've all gone over 1,000 yards, and they are still looking for a contract that will pay them by various teams around the NFL. And we're sitting here with training camps open. It's Tuesday, July 22nd, and they still haven't found exactly what they're looking for right now, whereas pretty much every reputable offensive lineman, like in the case of Colton McKivitz, has found a deal, has found a home, has found a team willing to pay them. And you look at the players who've come out of the San Francisco 49ers, you've seen a Laken Tomlinson go and you've cash in. You've seen Aaron Banks in surprising fashion. Mike McGlinchey got $17 million per year from the Denver Broncos. So it is not difficult to envision a world in which Colton McKivitz's next offseason is playing somewhere else. And ultimately that could be the hand that forces the 49ers to use a first-round draft pick on an offensive tackle, because I think that Kyle Shanahan looked at the 3rd round this year, or even the 4th round this year, as opportunities to potentially take someone who could fill in for McKivitz when he ultimately departs in free agency, or who could fill in for Trent Williams at the left tackle spot when he ultimately hangs it up. But the 49ers went from looking at, maybe backup players at the offensive tackle positions to going out and finding in the 3rd round Nick Martin, linebacker out of Oklahoma State, who could wind up starting next to Fred Warner. D. Winters is the favorite at that spot right now, but Nick Martin was an incredibly high-level tackler in college out of Oklahoma State, and he's someone who the 49ers could rely on as a starter. They drafted Upton Stout with pick number 100 right after the Las Vegas Raiders went back-to-back tackles at 98 and 99 in this year's NFL draft, and you'd have to imagine the 49ers had their eyes on one of those 2 tackles. The Raiders ultimately selected Tim Kawakami of the San Francisco Standard and Matt Barrows of the Athletic have both reported that may have been the case. The 49ers were maybe targeting that draft slot as the opportunity for this team to go out and get that backup tackle who could eventually slide in as a starter in year 2. So the goal for this 49ers team has been to figure out a way to get guys on, rookie deals and inside the system, playing in Chris Forster's practice squad, or, going up behind Trent Williams and getting certain days during the week where you are featured on the offensive line, where you're protecting Brock Purdy at practice, but where you're not playing those reps during a game. The 49ers did this a few years ago with left guard Aaron Banks, where he played behind Laken Tomlinson and then ultimately stepped into a more prominent role in year 2. And look where that took Tomlinson. I think the 49ers would have loved to have followed that up this year, but it just didn't materialize in the draft the way that they were hoping for. So all of that creates maybe a little bit more urgency for the 49ers at the right tackle position, as well as, of course, the wide receiver position, where you're going to go out, the 49ers are going to hit the practice field tomorrow morning, and immediately you will see reporters noting that they just look thin. It's just not a group that carries the high-level talent that it maybe once did, back when Ayuk was fully healthy, back when Deebo Samuel was at the peak of his powers, and with Ricky Pearsall coming on as a rookie, there was real hope that he could just potentially slide into the number 3 slot. Jennings would be your number 4, and you'd have one of the deepest wide receiving cores in the NFL. Now, Pearsall and Jennings are 1 and 2. One of them needs to step up. One of them needs to take a step forward in Pearsall, and the 49ers just really cannot afford a situation where either of those players is hurt for an extended period of time or isn't producing for an extended period of time, which, of course, happened at various points over the course of last season. So, just a few things I'm thinking about today with regard to the San Francisco 49ers after listening to that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan press conference. I will say it is such a privilege to be talking 49ers football again here with you on the leader. It's so fun to be back talking about the NFL, talking about this 49ers team after the nightmare 6-11 season. Everyone loves spring training in baseball. Everyone loves training camp in football. You're 0-0. Everyone is feeling the vibes. Everyone's having a good time, and everyone's looking forward to more 49ers talk. So tomorrow evening, I will be in the chair for Larry Krueger on Wednesday and Thursday as well, hosting Niners Nightly from 6 to 7. And then, of course, Sports Phone KNBR from 7 to 9 each evening. We'll do some Giants talk as well. 415-808-KNBR is the number. That's it for our phone calls tonight, but tomorrow night we'll be getting your first impressions of what you heard, what you read, and what you ultimately see if you're out there at training camp tomorrow, as I believe tomorrow's practice is open to 49ers fans. So I'll confirm that after this break, but definitely looking forward to hearing from you, 49ers faithful, tomorrow during Niners Nightly. It's always fun sitting in for Larry and filling in on his show. So I'm Kerry Crowley. You're listening to Sports Zone KNBR. When we come back, we'll wrap up one more time Giants baseball as they wrapped up Game 2 of this 3-game set in Atlanta against the Braves. A nightmare road trip for the Giants, but maybe a chance to turn things around tomorrow for this ball club and come home on a high note. You're listening to KNBR 104.5 680, the Sports Leader.
The nighttime is the right time for Sports Phone KNBR. Let's go on the sports leader. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
One strike pitch. Flores swings, hits a high fly ball down the left field line towards the corner. Profar back at the wall, looking up. It is gone! Wilmer Flores hits a 3-run home run. A towering drive down the left field line, and he just was able to keep it fair. For Flores, his 12th home run of the season, and the Giants have broken this one wide open. It is 9-0. Works out of the windup. And his 2-2, Schmidt swings and belts it high and deep out to left field. This one is on its way. It is gone. A no-doubter to left off the bat of Casey Schmidt. And there's no question on that one. A solo shot for Schmidt, and it's 3-0 Giants.
We are back here on Sports Phone KNBR. Kerry Crowley rolling on with you this evening, wrapping up tonight's show. It has been a privilege talking Giants baseball with you, and of course, for indulging me in some 49ers football last segment. I kind of joked going out of last segment that the Giants will need to start turning their road trip around tomorrow, and I got a few hits on the text line saying, didn't they do a little bit of that tonight with a 9-0 win? And sure, you want to count one win in Atlanta as turning a road trip around, maybe, but I think it's more about turning around the second half of this season after a brutal start and really a rough patch going into the break with a series loss against the Dodgers, where the Giants essentially had that series in the palm of their hand. They'd won on Friday night, and they couldn't snatch up a win on Saturday in a low-scoring game, and they came back to tie the game in the ninth inning on Sunday with Luis Matos' 2-run home run off of Tanner Scott. It was a game they should have won in extras. They fail to do so. They come out of the break. They get swept by the Jays in just ugly fashion. And then they play what may have been their worst game of the season on Monday night in Atlanta. I know that it was a 9-5 game, but that game was never close. And there were so many mental errors that added up, so many miscues that you look at, you point to, and you say, this is the sign of a failing baseball team. That I don't think one win is enough to essentially say, okay, this team is headed in the right direction again. But I do think that everything that needed to happen for the San Francisco Giants on Tuesday night in Atlanta did happen. They needed a great start from Landon Roop. They needed a hot start from this lineup. They needed a stress-free ball game that allowed Bob Melvin to deploy his bullpen however he saw fit. And they got all of that. In the top of the first inning, the Giants failed to score. In the bottom of the first inning, the Braves were threatening. First two runners reach base, and what does Roop do but reach back and strike out Ronald Acuna Jr.? With Profar and Olsen on, he gets Acuna Jr., who's one of the most dynamic players in all of baseball, came in tonight with an average over 325, an OPS sitting around 1,050. I mean, MVP-like numbers if he was healthy for the duration of this season. And Roop goes and he strikes him out. He's able to get out of the inning, and the Giants strike back in the top half of the second with 4 much-needed runs in a night where they were facing Davis Daniel, 28 years old. Good story. It's nice that this 7th-round draft pick back in 2019 finally makes his major league debut in the year 2025. Well, I guess, look, he'd pitched in the majors for the Angels last season, the year before, but he's finally getting the cup of coffee that he wants with the Atlanta Braves. But he's 28. This guy's not a top prospect. This guy is not someone who should mow through Giants hitters, and yet all season long, the Giants have lost to guys like Daniel. They've lost to pitchers who don't have elite track records. And so they go out, and in the second inning, the Giants strike. And I give Matt Chapman a ton of credit. I thought it was a ball that he hit over the wall. I addressed that earlier this evening. I think that replay shows, okay, it's a triple, fine. Give Wilmer Flores credit for the sacrifice fly, and give the Giants credit for refusing to settle at 2 runs. It was Casey Schmidt homering. It was Elliot Ramos making things happen, and I know that it's been a really rough few days for him in the field. Runs through the stop sign tonight. There's all sorts of questions that I have about Ramos that kind of make me think if Buster Posey wanted to, he might consider packaging Ramos for an elite starting pitcher with multiple years of control at this year's deadline. Now, I don't think it will happen, but the number of miscues that you've seen from Ramos and the fact that he's trending toward becoming a designated hitter on a roster where you've already got a DH locked in for the long haul and Rafael Devers, to me, there's just some red flags there that I think, you know what, there could be a baseball trade to be made at this year's deadline. And I know that you're hurting the lineup if you take out one of the best, most consistent hitters, but it at least crossed my mind when we saw, some of the plays in the outfield this week and running through Matt Williams' stop sign tonight. And I know that Ramos scored, but ultimately, you got to play the game the right way. You got to play things clean. And I think the rest of the Giants ball club was able to do that tonight. Willy Adames continues the tear that he's been on. He finishes 1 for 2 with 3 walks. You love to see the patience from Adames, which is so critical. He's got the OPS up to a respectable 724. He drives in another run tonight. Wilmer Flores picks things up with 4 runs driven in tonight. He gets up over 60 on the season. Let's see this. He was sitting at 55 for about 3 weeks, so he's only at 59 with those 4 runs driven in, but man, he needed a night like tonight. And you got contributions all over. Casey Schmidt, of course, hit the home run. Patrick Bailey, 2 hits tonight. Even Luis Matos drew a walk this evening. And certainly wild offerings from the Braves pitchers, led by Daniel, the outset of tonight's ball game. But this was exactly what the Giants needed after a real tough start to a road trip that called into question their trade deadline plans. And I think this is the night, and I've said this for the last few weeks, but I think this is a game that reinforces the idea that Buster Posey should buy on the margins at this year's trade deadline. I don't think that Posey needs to go out and needs to get a superstar to fix up this Giants lineup. He already acquired Rafael Devers. I don't think he needs to get a front end of the rotation starter. He's already got Logan Webb and Robbie Ray and Landon Roop, who's pitching like one, by the way. But if you add another starter to take the place of Hayden Birdsong in the rotation, if you add a few relievers to add some depth to that bullpen, if you look for a right-handed hitting outfielder who can complement Jung-Hoo Lee in center and Mike Yastrzemski in right, you just might find your way. And the Giants as a team are close. They're not that far off. And I feel like if you go into this year's deadline and you stand pat, you risk the idea that you're wasting this season from Logan Webb, that you're wasting this season from Robbie Ray, that you're wasting, and now he belongs in this conversation, this incredible season that you were getting from Landon Roop, who tonight was pitching in front of a bunch of family and friends, the North Carolina native, grew up watching the Atlanta Braves, and he finishes the evening as really one of the better pitchers in the National League over the last 2 months. His ERA is down to 3.11. And think about where Roop was at back when the month of May began. He was coming off outings where he, gave up 5 runs against Milwaukee, 4 runs against San Diego, 4 runs against Chicago. There were questions as to whether he belonged in the rotation. Back when Kyle Harrison was still a member of the Giants and Hayden Birdsong was pitching well out of the bullpen. And the Giants stuck with him, despite the fact that his ERA was sitting up about 4.89 when the month of May started. Now it's down to 3.11. And during that time frame, he's had 1 bad start. It was a start in L.A. against the Dodgers where he gave up 6 runs. And you know what Roop did the next time he faced the Dodgers? He atoned for it. Yes, he took the loss with 6 innings of 2-run ball, 1 earned on that Saturday, July 12th game against the Dodgers at Oracle Park. But he was outstanding that afternoon. He gave the Giants every reason to believe they could win that game. And for the most part, Roop has done that each time out. The Giants have won 5 of his last 6 starts. They've consistently figured out ways to win when he's been on the mound. They're 12-8 in his starts this season. Landon Roop is becoming one of the more dependable pitchers that this organization has seen in recent seasons. And to me, you can't just, if you're Buster Posey, let this opportunity slip away. Let a great season from Logan Webb and Robbie Ray and Landon Roop slip away because you didn't have the depth pieces, because you didn't have the guys who could fill in for a Jung-Hoo Lee or a Mike Yastrzemski while they're struggling, because you didn't have the bridge players in the bullpen who could get the game to Tyler Rogers and Camilo Doval and Ryan Walker. To me, if you're Buster, this game is an example more so than the previous 4, of why you should be a buyer at the deadline. I know that the Giants lost in ugly ways in Toronto. And I know that they were largely blown out on Monday night by a bad Braves team. But I still think, even at 53-49, that there's a path to success for this Giants team that I haven't necessarily felt was there with the 22, 23, and 24 teams, even when those teams were playing their best. And they all had moments. They all finished right at or around 500. They all were pretty boring. But there were all moments, glimmers, where they suggested they could be more than just an 81-win ball club. And I never felt as if Farhan Zaidi stepped on the gas pedal. I never felt as if the Giants would go for it. And with Posey at the helm, a former player calling the shots, I do. I really think there are opportunities for this team to get into the playoffs and beat some of the juggernauts. You know, you look at the teams that are succeeding in the National League right now, and you see the Brewers thriving. You see the Cubs winning a bunch of games. You see the Phillies surging. And you see the Dodgers at 59-42 entering play on Tuesday evening. But none of those teams, outside of the Brewers of late, are unbeatable. The Phillies 5-5 in their last 10. The Mets 5-5 in their last 10. The Dodgers 3-7 in their last 10. The Cubs 5-5 in their last 10. Milwaukee's won 11 in a row. The Brewers are on a remarkable hot stretch, and they've separated themselves from the rest of the pack. They might not win the Central, but they will be a wild card team. They will be a playoff team this year because of what they've done in the month of July. And now there are other teams that must separate themselves. The Giants ought to find a way. Buster Posey ought to look at this roster and view it optimistically. Because if you're a president of baseball operations, isn't that how the job should be done? Isn't the job about seizing opportunities, about taking chances when you can? I've seen enough around Major League Baseball after following it closely and reporting on it for the last decade, really following it closely for the last 3 decades, on executives who come into the job and act too timid, on executives who come in and are afraid of losing a trade. And I was struck earlier this year, before the Rafael Devers trade went down, when Buster Posey, in comments to Tim Kawakami of the San Francisco Standard, said, look, when Brian Sabian went for it in 2011, back when I was hurt and off the field, when he went for it by trading Zach Wheeler, the prospect, for Carlos Beltran, I loved that trade. I love that trade for the boldness of it and because it gave the Major League roster a chance to win. The Rafael Devers trade was very similar. It's a bold move. You're taking on a lot of money. Beltran was a rental, so it's a bit different. But you're giving up a player you really like in Kyle Harrison. You're giving up a potential outfielder that you really like in James Tibbs III. At the end of the day, those are the moves that you kind of have to make to give yourself the opportunity to get over the hump and to win, to get the best player in the deal and to win as many regular season games as possible so that you can then give yourself the chance to get in. Because we know teams with Posey and players like Posey, they win in the playoffs. The Giants are a far cry from being a playoff team right now, and one win is not going to change things. There are a lot of flaws that this roster has and a lot of things that must be addressed by manager Bob Melvin and his staff. A lot of things that these players must start doing correctly. But if you're Buster, I know that those 7 losses that the Giants suffered, or 6 losses the Giants suffered, were ugly. I know that they were bad. But I don't think they will cloud his vision of what this team can be and what it can become. I would rather the Giants try to go all in at the trade deadline, try to push in chips, and potentially miss out on a playoff berth by 1 game, than settle for what this roster is now and settle for another 82, 83-win season of could-haves, should-haves, and would-haves. And a win like tonight, a game pitched by Roop, goes to show that the Giants aren't that far off. They've got 3 great starting pitchers. They've got a lineup with Rafael Devers and Willy Adames that can round into form, that can, on certain days, put enough up on the board to win games. Now it's what can Buster Posey do to add to this team? We'll find out over the course of the next 8-9 days. I'm Kerry Crowley. This show has been Sports Phone KNBR. I want to thank our producer, Jacob Iolante, who's done such a great job this evening. I also want to thank you, the listeners, out there tonight. Thank you. We'll be back tomorrow evening. Giants play, 9:15 tomorrow morning, very early, so you'll see an abbreviated Murph and Marcus. Good stuff from them as they get you set for Giants baseball. The rubber match, a series the Giants absolutely must win, and a pitcher who could use a win as well, Justin Verlander, taking the mound for this San Francisco ball club. So you've got that tomorrow morning, and then tomorrow evening, I will be back with Niners Nightly from 6 to 7, filling in for Larry Krueger. It's the first day of 49ers training camp. I'm headed down to Levi's Stadium tomorrow. We'll do some Giants talk in the 7, 8 o'clock hours as well. A privilege to be here with you this evening. Always fun talking Giants baseball on KNBR with you. And like I said at the end of the last segment, we'll see if the Giants can really turn this road trip around. One win doesn't mark a turnaround. Tomorrow, when they take the field in Atlanta, Justin Verlander on the hill. You're listening to KNBR 104.5 680, the sports leader.